Men rising up to end the silence around us about the chains that bind us, to dispel the darkness of illusion with luminous spiritual technologies, to finally become the hero within us all. This is Arise, the Honest Man's podcast. I am Karuna Avatar Das, as with me as well, of course, as always, is my dearly beloved co-host Jai Jagannath Prabhu, and we have very esteemed guest with us today, Damodar Ro, who's joining us again for the second time. Welcome back, Prabhu. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank
and then we also have Chaitanya Charan Prabhu joining us for the first time, a most esteemed guest, and we're really, really honored to have him. Prabhu, thank you so much for agreeing and giving us your time. It's really, really wonderful to be here with both of you, Prabhu. So I just want to do you justice and give you an introduction, beginning with Damodar Prabhu, who is a writer. He's a personal coach that places particular emphasis on journaling and mindfulness. And then he's also a caregiver to the elderly with dementia. So definitely a very multifaceted personality. He has incredible passion for what he does. I've actually also experienced some of his personal coaching, and I was really moved by the experience. So we're really looking forward to your insights, Prabhu. And then Chaitanya Charan is a monk. He's a mentor and a spiritual author. He did his electronics and telecommunications engineering degree from the Government College of Engineering in Pune. Then he subsequently served as a software engineer in a prominent multinational software corporation. He travels all over the world, from Australia to America, giving talks on spiritual subjects in universities such as Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, and Cambridge, and also companies such as Intel, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. He's also the author of 25 books, author of the world's only Gita daily feature, wherein he writes a daily 300-word inspirational reflection on a verse from Bhagavad Gita. Till now, he has written over 1,700 Gita meditations that are posted on gitadaily.com and are read daily by thousands from all over the world. He also answers questions by seekers on his site, thespiritualscientist.com, where his over 3,500 audio answers and several hundred articles are available. His articles have been published in many national newspapers, including Indian Express, Economic Times, and Times of India in the Speaking Tree column. He's a member of ISKCON's leading intellectual body, the Shastrik Advisory Council, and he is the associate editor of ISKCON's global magazine, Back to Godhead. So certainly an immensely qualified personality with us today. We are very, very honored, Prabhu, once again. So thank you so much. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, I titled it. Sorry guys, if you haven't been finding the titles so awesome. It's just because I've been in the last few of them and I'm not really clever about it. But I titled this episode Transforming Chaos into Order, the Transformative Power of Journaling. And why I chose that title, well, I have a question about that we'll get into, but the subject matter of today's podcast is about journaling. And so I'm going to just start with a very basic question for both of you. What is journaling? Like, how do you conceive of journaling and why do you find it important? We're going to start there just so we can have definitions that are clear what we're working with here.
Okay.
Chaitanya, we'll start with you.
Okay. So I'd like to start with something. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here. I've seen some of your podcasts and very stimulating discussions, and I feel that you're honored to be here with you. And journaling is a topic which I have found very enriching for myself spiritually. But before I move on to journaling, I would like to just give a brief background of how I personally found it.
Okay,
discovered it. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you see this PowerPoint here?
Yes.
So, okay. Basically, I conceive of spirituality as approachable in three distinct ways. So, textual spirituality broadly refers to studying the texts of the spiritual tradition. For example, studying the Bhagavad Gita, the
Mm,
Bhagavatam, and then looking at, okay, what does this verse exactly mean? How does this verse connect with the next verse? What are the sections? What do the specific words mean? What do the different commentators say about this? So, that's a text centered spirituality.
mm,
Then there is traditional spirituality. So, by that, what I mean is that the texts have been taken by various traditions and they have developed their own practices and we could say principles. So, now there is definitely an overlap between the text and the tradition, but still, traditional spirituality means okay, we need to develop faith in these ideas and we need to make this, do these practices. For example, in our tradition, chant the holy names, worship the deities. We can talk about the five potent principles of bhakti, and there is a lot apart from that. So, which the tradition, by seeing how things can be best suited for people, that's traditional spirituality. Now, in today's world, when people say that I want to become more spiritual, they are not really interested in any particular text per se. They're not really interested in any particular tradition. What they are interested in is developing within them values that they consider spiritual.
mm,
So, for example, maybe becoming gaining more emotional stability, maybe gaining a greater self mastery, or learning forgiveness, learning broad mindedness, or
mm.
especially finding their own meaning and purpose in life. Now, all these are in one sense implicit in the text and in the tradition, but they are not that explicit.
All right.
So, overall, the way I try to share spiritual wisdom is that I focus on the application part. Now, within the tradition, for example, application would mean start chanting Hare Krishna or start worshipping the deities. But that is not exactly the application that seekers are interested in. For them, application means okay, how does it add value to my life in terms of the values that I value? I'm just playing with the words. How does it add value to my life in terms of the values that I value? So, how does it's going to make me more forgiving? How is it going to make me more introspective? Especially one big thing in spirituality today is people want self-understanding. I want to understand who I am better, so that of course I can find my mission in life or something like that. So, when I was studying our texts, and especially I started exploring contemporary conceptions of spirituality. So I found that among the various practices that were there is mindfulness, and I have studied and I present bhakti wisdom in terms of mindfulness also. But I found that journaling was a practice that was the most empowering practically, and at the same time, it was untapped in terms of connecting with our spiritual tradition.
Mm,
And whatever books I have read on journaling till now, and I have read quite a few, I find that they all give very good insights about self understanding. But there is, you could say, no tangible model of the transcendental self which underlies it.
mm.
So,
Ooh.
Cliffhanger.
I thought he was just pausing to adjust his PPT.
Okay, well, we'll just give it a moment. Damodar
Um,
Prabhu, is this a scheme that you're familiar with? That Prabhu has just presented us with.
In a more informal way, yeah. Um,
Mm, mm.
starting on a really personal, like universal, non-sectarian kind of note, and you can have a really wide audience for that.
mm,
Right.
And at the same time, you can be rooted in your tradition and influenced and inspired by it. But Chaitanya
Can you
Charan was really a genius in this whole department.
no, he has a very good way of. There's a cool word, taxonomy. You know, this word taxonomy. Taxonomy means like the ability to categorize things.
Hmm.
And all Indian philosophical traditions are very much into this practice of taxonomy, like categorizing things and breaking each category down to further categories. And
Yeah.
he's very good at that to, convey a certain
Yeah.
number of message. Well, we're gonna wait for him to plug back in, but maybe we can hear your story, your story into journaling, and particularly what is it for you and why do you find it important?
Sure. I mean, I've been journaling for a long time. I got a bunch of journals here, like from high school and important times in my life. But recently, it has taken on that more spiritual component, like Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was just talking about, where there's a sense of having a transcendent self, of being a conscious being, having a human experience. And that's where the mindfulness idea comes in, and just recognizing my thoughts and giving them a space to just flow and be expressed and understood, and then seeing like, okay, that's just like a content going through my mind, but it's not who I am.
Mm, mm.
And then you can
Do
kind
you?
of go ahead.
Well, no, just like in accordance with that, like really just letting your thoughts and your mind and your inner world flow. For myself, I find primary catharsis, or you could say like processing, release in my dialogue with friends and those who are dear to me and advisors and
Yeah.
mentors, and like really expressing my mind vocally. Do
Yeah.
you think that there's like, would you say that these two ways, like being with yourself, being with your journal, doing it privately and writing, as opposed to like sharing with people, would you say that they are equally powerful and important and necessary? Or would you say that the one is categorically more powerful and more necessary than the other?
I do both and find them very powerful. I guess the difference I'd say is that when you're journaling, it's it's like in science you isolate a certain phenomenon to study it. So when there's no one but you and your journal, it's just really all you, and there's no influence of like, well, someone's gonna read this, or
Yeah, yeah.
or they're
But I was journaling quite a bit last year through lockdown, and like, or not quite a bit, just like once every few nights before I would go to bed, I would just like write down the like really dark inner web of my dark night of the soul freaking COVID being.
hey, I do
And
that too.
but I had this thought when I was doing that like, oh my god, I actually, I wouldn't really want my kids to read this one day, but also I'm not gonna get rid of the journal. Like, I'm gonna hang on to the journal. So it's just
Hmm.
kind of like a matter of time before someone sees it.
I
Have
guess
you
that's
ever
why
had that
people
thought?
lock them, huh?
Yeah, but like
I definitely, when I got into journaling at the beginning of 2020, and I often write my journals as like a letter to God. So I would open it up like, Dear Krishna. And then I would just, as if speaking to Krishna, and I found it to be very cathartic in that way. But I was like really divulging like everything. And I mean, there were a few like high points, but a lot of it is like the dark stuff. And after I completed one booklet of the journal, I was like, I'm gonna burn this because if anyone finds this, it can end me immediately. And there was that discomfort around someone discovering the contents of my
yeah,
inner world, which isn't so pleasing to.
yeah.
It's almost
But
like
if
we're
you're
talking about this like a downside, but it's actually a big upside because we need a space to vent that stuff.
Right.
Totally, totally. Just one thing though is like, Jai, if you're journaling in the mood of like addressing Krishna, like, don't you have some sort of like formality or some like kind of some that like tinges the way that you express yourself? Or like, do you find that you can just be like
I have
totally vulnerable with Krishna?
I have a demonic birth, so the need for formality doesn't really come up in my head when I'm talking to Krishna. I mean, one of my first stories, one of my first remembrances in Krishna consciousness is I'm about a month into the movement. I go before the deity of Jagannath, and I want to go to Jagannath Rath Yatra in New York, but I don't really have that much money to travel. So I go before the deities in Chicago, and I stand Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. We have a Jagannath Baladev Subhadra deity there, and I'm like, all right, I hear that you guys are God, and I'm still working that out. But if you are God, could you hook a brother up with some money so I could go over to? And that was like literally how I would converse with the deities. And I found that throughout my years, my means of communication has been more or less like that. I mean, a little bit tweaked when I have like specific times for a formal approach, but my genuine approach is just like kind of very natural. It's probably like Sahaji or whatever, but that's the way I feel that I'm able to express myself most authentically, because I'm not going to be able to do that in front of others exactly in that particular way. And since Krishna already knows what's up, might as well just, so that's, I kind of write my journal in that particular fashion when I was able to keep it up. Anyway, so I guess coming back to this question, like the importance of it, I've heard some indications from Karuna Avatar just now, and maybe yourself also. Hey guys, and I also want to say there was a big storm and where Chaitanya Charan was at in India. So his internet had only come on an hour before the podcast started. And we actually got on a half hour before to make sure the connection was okay. And it was working like flawlessly. And sure enough, once the podcast started, now we've had this trouble. So we don't know if he'll be able to come back on because of the storm and electrical problems that are going on in India, unfortunately. If he's not able to come back on, though, we'll just do a part 2 where we're able to talk to him also. But right now, we're going to just carry on the conversation and hear what Damodar's got to say to us. So yeah, I want to hear about this importance question also. Like, of course, again, a little bit more clarity of what is journaling for you as you've come into that, and why is it important, or how have you found it important?
I like what you were saying earlier. Like, we're so distracted with social media, we lose contact with our own inner world. And a big part of spirituality is just developing richness in your inner world.
Wow.
So that's what you would call as why it's important, as a means of coming kind of in contact with the self.
Yeah, like I think of Viktor Frankl's book where he says that the people who survived weren't the ones who had the most. He was in a concentration camp, Auschwitz. Right. He said the people who survived weren't the ones who had the most food or clothes, but the ones who had the most sense of inner meaning and purpose. And our life nowadays is totally not like that. Like, we have more than what we need, to the point where it's like too much, and we're just distracted all the time. But we lose that inner world,
But that's the thing. That's like a big thing for me, is that I feel like I have so many external distractions, like so many external engagements and things happening on the outside, that it's difficult for me to go in, because like journaling is like, I find it an austerity, it's like it doesn't flow. I haven't reached like a state of flow yet, and so then like
I have 2 theories about that, and I'm very interested. Just coming back to, I have 2 theories of why it's hard for it to flow. And the first theory is definitely connected to our engagement with the digital media world. Like, what does flow is checking my Instagram. There's like this meme where I saw this meme where it's like, I closed Instagram and then it says brain, now what? And then it says me, and you're going back on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen that meme. So that's one obstacle to flow. The digital media universe pulls us away from ourselves. That's one problem. And the other problem, I forget this quote from who has said it, but I often refer to it in my meditations, that the greatest misery that man suffer is from their inability to sit in a quiet room alone. I forget who says this. He was also some sort of Catholic, I think. So the greatest misery man suffer is their inability to sit in a quiet room, to be alone. Yeah, sit in a quiet room alone. And so that's the other problem that causes an obstacle to flow to like something like a journaling practice. On the one hand, I'm being pulled away from myself from a very seductive digital media universe. On the other hand, I'm a little afraid to sit with myself because I don't know what the implications of what that means. And so these two elements make it very difficult to actually build some sort of practice that makes you go inward, like a journaling practice. So I'm sure you may have discovered that for yourself also, Damodar. How did you like deal with that, or how do you deal with that? How do you overcome? I think these are like two big obstacles that are not small ones to overcome. Being
Social
seductively
media
pulled
and
away
like
from
how to
yourself and being scared to be with yourself. These are like
being
two
scared to
huge
be with yourself.
obstacles.
Yeah, I think that the being
Like Prabhu, really personally, you know, not like how you think you should, but like how do you actually?
okay, we're like getting real here.
Yeah, we're getting real.
All right, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, I think the fear of being with oneself is actually the deeper root cause of the distraction.
Mm.
And we're all experiencing that. I mean, talking to personally, like I have an entire binder here of like people's like revealing their hearts and minds and like really getting into it. And that's a lot of where I speak from is my own
Mm.
experience, but also the shared experience of other people. So, we could talk about the fear of being with yourself. We could talk about ways of journaling that make it more accessible and effective.
Well, let's
You're
let's let's start with the overcoming the fear of being with yourself. Since you're saying that this is probably at the root of why we allow ourselves to be distracted so profoundly. How do
Yeah.
you, on a personal level, or how do you guide others who are dealing with that fear very viscerally to overcome that so that they can, sit with themselves and journal? And like, what is a process that you take someone through or that you yourself go
Yeah.
through to
Well, usually
overcome
we're kind of like there's like the surface manifestation of the problem.
that?
Like I'm not content with myself, so I'm like seeking these distractions, or I've got this habit, bad habit, or that one, and that's what we notice first, and we don't actually make the connection.
Mm.
That it's escapism. Um, and so if you just kind of dig under the surface a little bit, you start getting towards the thing you're avoiding. Um, I was,
how
yeah.
how does that manifest for you, Prabhu? Can you give us an example of something that you'd experienced in that regard?
Well, I mean, since I was like 12, it was like my friends were like, "Hey, check this out. You can see naked girls on the internet."
Ah.
And you think it's like the coolest thing ever. At least I did. But like then I'm like going through this trauma in my life where like I don't feel safe at home. I don't feel
Mm.
supported by my parents. I actually ran away and never went back.
Sidebar. I feel like
Ooh.
a totally a white person thing to do. I'm sorry to say.
Oh my
That's just a
God!
sidebar. I'm making light of it. I'm sorry, not to make light of a very serious thing. Just I definitely wanted to run away
Yeah.
many
I
times,
mean,
but I
I
felt like
am
my
being
mom.
serious, and like I've got some serious trauma,
Wow.
and those things connect where it's like
Mm.
my brain is hardwired like stress, anxiety, sex. And
Mm.
like it stops even being about sex, it just becomes about like pain management.
Right.
But and I think as a devotee, there was a lot of guilt and shame and thinking that it's actually about lust.
Mm.
And then like the frustration, like, I'm engaged in the spiritual process. The book says like it's supposed to just go away automatically, and it's not happening. Over the last few years, I've kind of dug into myself a lot.
Mm.
Um, I've spoken to friends and attended seminars and just been in a really vulnerable place. A big part of that's been journaling, and I've been helping other people too. And I'm I'm now seeing how this whole thing works, and I'm getting out of it.
Mm.
So you want to talk about getting real? There you go.
Prabhu, Prabhu, have you do you feel like you've sufficiently managed to process the trauma of like such a huge thing happening to you so early in your life, of like leaving home and just all the consequent experiences from that and everything that you dealt with before, have you do you feel like do you feel like you've dealt with it all sufficiently?
It's definitely a lifetime thing, but I've been
Mm,
really proactive about it. Um, in the last couple years, I started receiving weekly coaching and just like really talking about the stuff that makes me shake,
mm,
like the kind of stuff you don't want to deal with. Just to use an analogy, I was at the temple, and beautiful temple room, beautiful deities, beautiful kirtan, and then I'm like going around like, where's my service? Where's my service? And I found this closet that's just like the place where people dump the stuff they don't want to deal with. And I was like, okay, that's my service right there. And I just got in there and I just started like getting rid of the obvious garbage and organizing things, finding valuable things that are just lost in there and giving them a place. And so that's kind of my nature and what I've been working on with myself too. It's like you can function without going into that closet. You can go
mm.
about your life and no one's going to mention that closet. No one's going to be like, hey, you need to deal with that. They're just like, we need you to show up to work. We need you to be the husband or father. We need you to be the friend. We need you to pay your rent. But no one's like, hey, you need to deal with your stuff. Um, but when we do, it just creates such a transformation in how we experience life and how we feel and how we can connect with other people.
Mm, mm,
So I have this. I'm still trying to eke out a little bit more in this area of building a practice. Overcoming the obstacle of being afraid with yourself and building some sort of journaling practice. And maybe this might be a good time to insert how I came up with the title of this episode, "Transforming Chaos into Order." And because the way that I conceive of journaling right now, and I probably got this from some sort of Jordan Peterson book or something. But the idea that in
That's
the
literally
Christian,
the title.
huh?
That's literally the title of his book. So
Oh, really? I mean, I only know the 12 Rules of Life one, and I've read that
that's
particular one.
okay, okay, okay.
But anyway, this contrast of chaos and order comes up in a lot of places in a lot of books that I'm reading that deal with like male sovereignty and wellness and so on. And the idea is like this idea of like language or like the logos, because I think in the Bible it says something. In the beginning, there was the logos, and so this divine language is what is like the organizing principle of the universe,
yeah,
which is very interesting, which is not totally dissimilar to how we present. First there's the manifestation of the Shabda, from the breathing of Vishnu, and then after that the creation comes.
Mm,
And then that Shabda is invested in the heart of Lord Brahma. And from the investment of that language in Lord Brahma, he knows how to like, be the architect of the universe. So there's some connection there. So the way that I conceive of journaling is like there's this chaotic inner world. Like the voices in my head are many and they're chaotic and they're bewildering and they're benighting. Like they cause darkness to fill the mind. And there's like a lot of potential that's inside there, but unless I can bring order to some of that chaos, then I'm not going to have intelligible thinking. And if I don't have intelligible thinking, I'm not going to have anything actionable to do. And if I don't have a clear aim in terms of action, then I'm going to be easily arrested by these external seductive forces and so on. So kind of the way that I think of journaling is like logos, using language to transform the chaos in my mind into order. And so how does one, so I wanted to build up more from your own experience, and also because you've worked with a lot of clients where you're using this technique. How do you help them build a journaling practice, and how do they, what happens to them when they're going through this practice of, do you actually experience that transformation of chaos into order and so on? This is kind of the idea that I'm working with in my head, at least.
yeah, I'm noticing current avatar with like the expression on his face. And I'm really
I'm
curious
also
about
noticing
what's
that.
going
I was just like actually in a completely different space with you right now, Damodar Prabhu. Like I
on.
felt like I was really there with the experience that you'd had,
Mm,
and I almost feel like obviously what you've experienced in your life and the trauma that you'd gone through has compelled you to
mm,
take the direction that you've taken. And I think that it seems natural to me that through everything that you've worked through, and let's say the chaos in perhaps your external world, which then you internalized, so obviously those experiences compelled you to enter into the line of work to help others deal with those things, because you know how it feels. And I was just like really there with you in your space, what you've gone through, and I was kind of hoping to unpack more of that experience, and how that how your experience as a human being has brought you to this practice, and like, the power of it and sharing it with others. Um, and I just always feel that, like, the most powerful way to learn about anything is to learn from people who have gone through the thing and done it themselves. So that was just really where I was, and then I felt like, you know we headed into a more sort of like into a different space, and I was still just very much there and kind of like trying to,
I like both
like,
Well,
actually.
I think they're
They're
connected.
connected, yeah.
How do
okay.
you? So you've experienced trauma. This chaos has entered into your mental world, and that has compelled you to, amongst other things, start journaling. And so, how did that journaling experience allow you to transform the chaos that had entered inside? How did that journaling allow you to organize some of that chaos in a way that it didn't sabotage your life and it allowed you to grow? So the two ideas are actually very deeply connected in there. Like, how did
Yeah,
that journaling
absolutely.
experience allow you to organize those experiences in a way that could be useful for you and not sabotage you?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, at the heart of it all is the desire for me to use what could have defeated me for my
Mhm.
success.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
that's that's what's most in my heart at the core of it all. And there's a lot of chaos there. There's a lot of pain and confusion, a lot of experience of betrayal.
Mm.
And like you said, Jai Jagannath Prabhu, when you're carrying that stuff around, our actions are coming from our subtle body, our thinking, feeling, and willing. So when there's chaos in that area, then there's also chaos in my actions. And so I've just spent so much time being overly dependent on other people and um, having a chaotic life where it's like things seem fine and then it just crashes. And then I'm like, trying to recover and going over here and there. And
Because you're like in an external environment depending on others, which places you in an artificial situation, and you just don't have control over your circumstances like that. Yeah.
yeah, artificial. It's not really attuned to my growth and needs. And I think that's also part of avoiding your inner world. It's like, okay, well, I'll just get someone else to tell me what to do. That, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite.
that's a
Well,
lot of
that's
cult.
that's actually like, for me, that's a really really big thing in my life right now. Like, I'm facing a ton of complexity and like really big decisions that I need to make, and I'm finding a lot of chaos in my inner world and difficulty making those big decisions. And I tried to make decisions by myself, and it didn't go well. I intentionally didn't go to others who would usually help me to make decisions, and it really didn't go well. And that sort of like brings me to a conclusion that, we need others to help us make decisions. you know like, we need to defer. We need to have more guidance from those who know better, because there's always someone that knows better than you, right, in
I
your life.
agree, and at the same time, it's ultimately your responsibility. You make the choice. Like you
Yeah.
choose to do what the other person tells you, and if someone gives you bad advice and you follow it, it's your fault.
Yes. I just want to say yes. I'm thinking of the one of the final phrases in Krishna's Gita 1863, where he said, "Yata itrasita takuru." He tells Arjuna to do as you like, but you deliberate fully on what I've said, and if you come to the conclusion that you do as I like, but you still have to deal with the repercussions.
Own it. You got to own it. You got to own your decision.
Like you made
Yeah.
that decision to accept
Yeah. Don't blame me.
that.
Yeah, that's powerful. I really also connected with what you'd said about like taking that which could have defeated you and using that for your success. I really, really connect with that because it's like I sort of see myself balancing on this really fine, like razor's edge of like I could very well go into a dark direction, but somehow or other I'm like able to proceed, um hopefully, and like trying to head towards the light. So Prabhu, like those things that could have defeated you, why didn't they defeat you? Like what made you move past, break through?
And I'm interested. I want to amplify that question with just saying, and how did that translate into writing specifically? Like, yeah, how did that translate? Yeah, into writing, into journaling.
Yeah. Well, honestly, when you ask that question, Karun Avatar, it takes me to a very personal, emotional place.
Mm.
And you asked me what was it that made the difference for me, and it was people that I love and respect and trust telling me that I'm a good man.
Wow, I really feel that. That's the thing, like I have a lot of, not a lot, but like a handful of people in my life that like I deeply love and cherish, and that are like immensely, like unconditionally encouraging to me.
Yeah.
And they just somehow or other believe, they just keep believing in me, and that's what keeps me going. So
Yeah.
I completely connect with that. That's
For me, it's like an idea of inherent value that's covered. It's not like, yeah, I'm good, like I'm perfect, it's all about me. I I choose to see any good qualities that I have as gifts that I'm responsible to use well, that I could lose just as easily. Like even the capacity to understand myself and others, be empathetic or insightful. It's just a gift. And um, I'm really as good as how I use it by my own free will.
yeah. Uh, yeah, but like that's the thing, like when you recognize your gifts, right? Like if you become cognizant of what your gifts are, and like what you can bring to the world, but you find yourself being disconnected from your ability to do so. Like it's like what you can give, but there's almost like a glass ceiling between you and your ability to translate that into action. Like how do you how do you make that connection? It's like, okay, this is my potential. You become aware of your nature, but then like really manifesting it. Like how much of what you feel you have and can give are you able to manifest, and how do you manifest it?
As you ask that, I get the sense that you're thinking of your own experience.
Absolutely.
Could you be more clear what you're thinking of when you ask that question?
Like for instance, um I have a certain idea about like how I should be going about my daily life,
Mm.
um like in order to succeed fully, like in the long term, right? Like for instance, I know that in order for me to have like a perfect day where I have enough time for everything, I need to wake up at 4 a.m. because I take long to chant Hare Krishna. So if I don't like start super early, then I'm screwed. Then my day practically begins at like 11 or like noon if I don't wake up at 4, you know. So like I know I need to do that, and I know that I need to do exercise daily. That's super important for me. I've got like a Rajasic body and energy, and if I don't do that, then, and I also know that I need to eat in a particular way, or like not eat in a particular way, right? And I know that, like, what else is there? There are
Yeah,
these
I get where you're
practices,
coming from now.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then it's kind of like, but like most of the time, because you were saying that you were in this kind of environment of, or you were in this situation of like being overly dependent on others, being in a situation that you can't fully control, like all of that. I really relate with that because I find myself in a similar situation. So it's continuously,
And
and then
you
it's
have
so
your
much
own
harder.
particular needs in nature that, like, if for me, like, chaos to order is like I have taken responsibility to create an environment for myself that suits me. And the same would go for you. Like, you have particular needs, and if you're just signed up for someone else's program, you're not going to be able to do that, and you're not going to be able to take care of yourself and be your best self.
Yeah. Yeah.
But bringing journaling into this, I have a journaling exercise that I do with people, and it's kind of journaling. Like, they're actually talking, and I'm writing down what they say, and then I can send it to them afterwards. And we've actually done it before, you and I, Karan Avatar
Yes.
Prabhu.
Yes, I
Yeah,
remember very well. Yeah.
yeah. So, like, so much of the time we're like in performance mode, you know? Like, here's the formula for success. Here's imperfect me. I'll just force imperfect me to go through these motions.
Oh my
Um,
God.
that's like our strategy.
Yeah.
But I it actually makes me angry. Like, it's so impersonal. Like, you think of someone else doing that to you and how you feel about it. Even if it's something that's good for you. You know, it's like, do you care about me? Or you just have like some control obsession that you're taking out on me. Um, so like a great journaling exercise is just a dialogue between the different sides of your personality. We got that idealistic side that's just like, yeah, like 4 a.m., finish those rounds first thing, then I'm gonna work until like 8 p.m., and then I'm just gonna read Krishna book and go to bed. Bam, success. And then you got this resistance side. It's like, oh yeah, great plan. It's just laughing because it's like, yeah, I'm not intimidated by that. I'm here to stay.
I'm not
I'm here to
intimidated, man.
stay. You know, go ahead, try that. You know, it's like, it's almost like raising your inner child. We try to be in a paradigm of like, my better self, I'm just gonna act on that, and my lower self, I'm just gonna like throw it in the trash. You know, just get rid of it, and it doesn't go away because it's yourself. You can't you can't escape yourself. There's literally nowhere you can go where you can escape yourself. So it's not
Wherever
about,
you go, just remember that wherever you go, you have to take yourself with you.
yeah, eternally.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
in Krishna consciousness, we learned that that principle is eternal. So that lower self we don't want to deal with, it's actually, we have to like understand its needs, have compassion, and lead it and mature it.
Wow.
So like the same tendency can come out in a better way.
That's an interesting notion. Of course, in the taxonomic sense, of thinking of the soul different from the body.
Can you just, Prabhu? Can you just say what taxonomics mean again?
The word taxonomy is like basically the breaking down of a subject matter into different categories and then subcategories.
Okay.
So we think of the body and the soul is eternally pure and all of that. So
Right.
what I'm hearing is like when we're here in this world, we always are carrying these two sides of us together. The that's called the shadow side is one, and the more sattvic side, or the heavenly side, and they're always together. Actually, you're not going to be able to actually destroy one side in favor of the other. So what I just heard from you is like something like you have to learn how to integrate it. Like you're saying, be
Yeah, can I
compassionate.
interrupt you there for a minute?
Yeah.
We think of integrity as perfectionism. Like,
Okay.
here's the absolute best standard you can follow,
Dude,
and I should do that, and anything less than that means that there's something wrong with me.
that's exactly the thing, bruh.
But the real meaning of integrity is parts working together.
Hmm.
Like a bicycle has integrity because the gear's in the right spot, the chain's in the right spot, the pedals, the handles, and it works. It doesn't mean that it's like the epitome of perfection. So
Okay,
similar, yeah.
but question, like the lower nature is inherently lower. So like how do you take something which is dark and like pulling you down and like actually utilize it or put it
Because desire is separate from what it becomes invested in. And we conflate the two and try to get rid of them both.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
can you yeah, please unpack that.
Okay, so like we all have human needs. We all have spiritual needs too. And those tendencies get misdirected and invested in things that aren't in our real best interest. And we keep our desires invested there while trying to throw the whole thing out. We're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You have to extract the desire by understanding what's the need that's drawing me to that thing.
You know how what I here I'm gonna reflect. You know, when we say lower nature, just using the language of our family, lower nature means like something like tamasic, or maybe perhaps something rajasic. And we normally just tend to take it as like bad. Thomas is bad, and Rajas is bad, but they're not really intrinsically bad, so to speak. But how they're used makes them bad or good. Like you need Rajas to move, you need Thomas to sleep. If some tyrannical government is there, you're gonna have to manifest a lot of Rajas and Thomas, like destructive energy, to deal with that. When Arjuna is like slaying cats on the battlefield, there's a lot of Rajas and Thomas involved in that process.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to using the same idea. It's not
Sure.
really inherently bad, but how it's invested. And so learning how to integrate those parts that could be very destructive or rajasic, in ways that they're not actually destructive and
Yeah,
so on.
like coming back to the bicycle, there has to be a part that's hitting the floor, the
Right.
wheels, and it's going to be dirty, and it's not
Mhm.
as clean as the handles or as important, but you need both. And so
Mhm.
similarly, like we have so many different parts of ourselves, and there has to be a place for everything with the vision of where we're going, like a path forward to where we want to go, and that's integrity.
Mm. So now bringing it to this idea, how does journaling help us come into a state of integrity, or how have you experienced that? Like, I really want to understand this because I'm a type of guy that manifests big brother energy my whole life. It's my karma. I was the elder brother biologically. When I was in the ashram, I was just slightly older than everyone else, so I was the big brother there. When I came over here
People
to
are
New
drawn
York,
to it too.
huh?
People are drawn to it too. Like you're
Yeah,
charismatic. Like you
so
can
I
create
got
groups and make things happen.
yes, I got a lot of that energy, and people are stepping forward and asking me for mentorship. And I'm just a big brother, bro. I'm not trying to like give guidance to anyone or really coach anyone. But I'm starting to think that as I get older, because I'm not getting married and I'm not having kids. And so I'm thinking of ways that I have to contribute to the community of devotees if I'm not going to contribute by giving kids, which I think is this is a personal thought. I think that's one of the most important contributions you can make to a society is to give children. So if you're not going to do that, you have to have other ways in which you're making a meaningful contribution.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to think about mentorship. I'm like older. I'm getting into the late 30s now. And so more of that Vatsalya Bhav is coming up a little bit. Like I need to actually like maybe take care of people. I do take care but kind of in a very hands-off way. I'm thinking a little bit more hands-on. And it feels like journaling is going to be a really important part of something that I need to do for myself and something that I would probably guide others to do. So I'm really interested to know how stepping into integrity, as you've just described it, which I think is a very really wonderful way of thinking about it, like different parts working together,
Yeah,
shadow and light and so on. How
yeah.
does journaling
I found
help
that
us step
meaningful.
into how does journaling
How
help
does
us step into integrity?
I just also want to
yeah.
say that like I'm always I Jai has the big brother energy. I've got the little brother energy. Like I've always been the freaking like little brother or like the like junior kid in the equation.
Are you
So we
frustrated
balance
about
each
that?
other out. Yeah, I'm so frustrated, bro. Like that's why I
Honestly,
made
I'm
like
frustrated too, bro. From the other side, I get a little frustrated too about that.
yeah, yeah. I made a
Yeah.
like really stupid decision recently, and that was because I got frustrated of like the little brother constant situation and like deferring to other people.
You
But
try to
then I
flip on the
realized that
other
I'm
extreme.
just always going to be a little brother, and now I'm totally at peace with it. So anyway, back to the question.
Well, that was loaded. You're just like, here's all my stuff, and okay, let's go over there.
Yeah. But like I just like we need to answer Jai's question because Jai
Yeah,
wants
yeah.
to talk about journaling,
Journaling.
guys. Like this
Okay.
this
We're
episode is
focusing.
supposed to be about journaling.
Okay,
Come
we're
on,
focusing
Karuna,
here.
stop
You
interrupting
gotta
the
focus.
journaling episode. God.
No,
Okay.
it's I always like learning about you. I'm like a very personal person, you know.
Yeah, me too. I really want to talk with you more, Prabhu. We should have a chat like
Yeah, that'd be
outside the
great. You know, I feel
podcast.
like podcast is like the modern friendship. You know, like hey, let's be friends and record it. And I'm just like, okay, we can record it, but I actually really just want to be your friend.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do. Okay, anyway, we'll chat soon.
Okay, so I'm on this whole theme of the bicycle and integrity,
Right.
bringing things into order. So what I always say is that your mind is too big for your head and your heart is too big for your chest.
Mm.
We have to
Wait, wait,
get it
wait,
out
wait, wait, Prabhu, say that again. I was just busy writing a silly comment. Please say that again.
there. Our minds are huge. They're too big for our heads.
Oh my God, Prabhu.
And our
Yes.
hearts too. There's too much packed in there. It's like, have you ever owned a storage unit and it's
No.
literally packed to the top, like all the way
Oh,
around?
oh yeah, I've seen that. My dad is a hoarder. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen
so like imagine trying to go in there and organize it without taking anything out.
that.
Like Tetris or something, you
Mm.
know? Compared to if you can actually take things out and then sort them out and then put it back in.
Mm.
So whether you're talking with a friend or you're journaling, that's what you're doing. You're getting it out so you can see what's there. You can be a little bit objective. Ideally, you can be compassionate, caring, taking
Mm.
responsibility, having a vision for how you want to organize yourself and a way that'll help you get to your goals and vision for a meaningful life. And then you bring it back.
I just
Yeah.
heard something very nice from you, at least about the coming to an earlier question, the importance of journaling. It allows you to be objective.
Mhm.
Hopefully, you can be compassionate, following, looking at the objects or the contents of the mind. And then you can become a leader for it to lead it in such a way that it doesn't sabotage your life, which is
Yeah.
an amazing idea. So, do you have like sort of questions that you prompt people to?
Questions are the seed of thought.
Yeah, questions are. I have a lot of. I'm really into the whole question thing as a
Yeah, me
theme
too.
or a topic. I often
Yeah,
share
I'm into
quotes about
questions, man.
questioning.
I've been like finding books on questions lately and really thinking about it a lot. And that's usually my first step
Mm,
is like there's one thing to come up with good questions that can be asked of anyone, but it's
right.
another level to find someone's questions. And that's something I really enjoy doing is just
Find
talking with
someone's questions. What do you mean by
yeah,
that?
someone's sharing their mind, their heart, and they kind of get to this point of uncertainty or just like the edge of their awareness or understanding, and they're like wanting to go further. And you're like, hey, that's a question. There's a
Mm,
question right there. And all of our thinking is prompted by questions. And
mm,
so if you can like identify the question and you work on that, it's like changing your DNA.
mm.
You adjust your
Okay.
DNA, your whole body's going to change.
Yeah. That
I don't know
makes a
if that's
lot of
possible, but that's the idea.
No, no, that makes a lot of sense. Can you give a recent example from like maybe some counseling that you've done and just make the person anonymous somehow or other, or just like give us an example of how you've done that?
Identifying the question and
Yeah.
transformative thing.
That's a tough question. My instinct is to kind of give some principles of how you would do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
You could also apply it to me and my self-absorption and sharing all my stuff on the show. Maybe that helps. I don't know. Like
Okay, I
maybe
can do that really
I
easy.
said some things and then like yeah, like
Okay.
you can use
Can
me.
I reference our guided journaling?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Do you remember your original question?
No.
Okay. So what I remember is that you were feeling like splayed in your determination of wanting to have the strict program and be like really pocket devotee,
Yeah.
and then like also having this kind of dangerous side, like I want to get on a motorcycle and I just want to like
Oh my god! I probably yeah, yeah, I totally said that. I said that before, didn't I? Yeah, you're looking at it right now, aren't you?
no, I'm remembering, you know.
Oh my god, Rui, you have
I
such
like
a great
know
okay.
people.
Okay, continue. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, and there's this other side of me that's like a fucking scared little boy.
Mm.
And you use this really harsh language, and it really stood out to me. And we kind of explored those different sides of yourself, and then I said, well, what is this little boy needing? He said like care, compassion, love, acceptance. And I'm like, well, you're using such harsh rejecting language to describe him, and then recognizing he has these deep needs, and that's
Mm.
you. So like the question can start with like, how do I do my routine? How do I force myself into these
Ah.
actions that I need to do and just like be like a perfect robot in behavior? But as you go deeper and you integrate the different sides of yourself and accept them and take responsibility for them, the question becomes like, how do I take care of myself, be satisfied while doing my routine? How do I lead myself when like I have a history of not being able to trust myself?
Mm.
Like, say your discipline is working out, going to the gym, and every time you do it, you like tear yourself up, like you go too far. Our mind's job is to protect us in a very survivalistic way. And so the mind's going to develop like a serious resistance to protect us from ourselves. So it's just like, it's like the law of personal nature. Like you have to follow your nature. This isn't the Bhagavad Gita, it's a law of nature that you have to follow your nature. Um, so we have to find a way to work with it to get where we want and not be tyrants to ourselves.
It seems that because you were saying questions are the seed of thought, which is a very interesting statement that you made, which I think is true. And it seems that journaling somehow can help you to discover those questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes journaling is follows the follows the already like the identification of such a question, and now you're like writing about that and maybe exploring how to answer that in a deep way.
Yeah. I
I'm
think an
just
important principle for journaling is just always start with an intention.
an intention.
It gets boring and
Can you
repetitive and you lose the habit when you just sit down like I'm just gonna like write.
right. Prabhu, can you give us kind of like a selection or like yeah, like a selection or a variety of potential intentions that we could have starting journaling?
One is finding your questions.
Okay.
One is to become conscious of the scripts that go through your head.
Hmm.
Um, by
That's a really good one. Power.
Yeah. And I guess that also like ties in with what you said about like that like the dialogue between two sides of yourself. I feel those two connect quite a lot.
yeah,
Um, yeah. because
We haven't
that dialogue is so repetitive.
Yeah. I mean, we're like talking about liberation here. Um, these
Bro.
scripts in our head are tools. So like, like the disciplinarian voice, like I'm gonna do what I should. I'm gonna force myself to do it. There's a place for that. Like you're at the end of your work week, you're just like totally spent, but you need to finish up. You can't just like leave your job. Disciplinarian, like that's the time for it. Like you got a hammer, there's a nail, bam, hit it. But you can't be like just going with the hammer all the time. You need different tools to build what you need to build, and you need to separate yourself as a conscious being and knowing what you're doing and when you're using these tools. So there's a time to be perfectionistic, there's a time to be like just pushing through, and there's a time to be like really sensitive and giving space and understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the thing is, like, we're all, at the end of the day, we're all completely, like, personally responsible. Like, it's every person's responsibility to, like, develop the discretion to know when to utilize these various sides of ourselves: the perfectionist, the disciplinarian, the whatever, the adventurer, whatever it may be. Like, we all have to develop that, but it just, like, it's like, and so you're mentally alone in one sense, and there's like,
I feel
that's
like
like,
that's where you're at in your decisions, because it can almost feel arbitrary. Like you could live in this place, you could be in Miami or San Francisco or New York or Beijing. Like those are all like, I mean, if you're not just considering your capacity, like those are all options. Or even like I
yeah,
can marry this person versus this person. Like you could go either way. It's not like a school test where it's like answer, bubble A is the right answer. I'm going to get the points. The other three, I'm not.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like you're like struggling with that.
totally. Anyway, like, Kamini was just saying just now, it's all coming out now, Karuna Avatar. It kind of is, and like, I don't really mind. I'm one of those people. I really don't. I just don't mind. But anyway, I still, like, Jai wants to talk about journaling, and I feel we shouldn't make this too much about me. So yeah, Damodar, we'll
We're like
talk about this.
journaling out loud as we're talking about
Yeah,
it.
we're journaling out loud.
I'm
Oh
just like
wow,
naturally like sink into coach mode, like I
totally,
enjoy it.
totally.
I love doing it. I'm really interested in people.
We came across this statement that it takes a whole village, so to speak, to organize a mind, which I also appreciate. So a lot of times, a lot of the chaos in the mind does come to order by conversation as such.
Yeah.
And I am zooming in on the journaling part because I just like to stick to theme, but I'm not at all minding the personal coaching session that's going on also.
I can't help it.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's cool. It's something.
CoachDamodar.com.
I'm on, I guess I just coming, I don't know, towards the end soon, but I'm curious how to start and how to keep it up, because I've started journaling many times over the last 2 years. And I had periods, I think the longest period that I kept it up was about 4 months, 3 or 4 months. And that time I was kind of doing like a free, what do you call it? Open, like free journaling, where you could just kind of write whatever comes to the mind.
Yeah.
And I would always
stream of consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And I always I would always start off Dear Krishna, and then just let the stream of thought. And I used to call it as a mind dump or a psychic evacuation, because it actually very much felt like that, like stuff just coming out. And as you said, without going back and reading it, I was allowed to be kind of objective and compassionate. I'm not, anyway, I could be a little hard on myself, and then kind of like see what I needed to do with that, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then after
That's
4
like the
months, I
part
wasn't
where-
able to keep it up.
Sorry to interrupt for one moment.
Yeah.
But I gave that analogy of having a storage unit.
Right.
That's like the part where you're just like, okay, I'm taking everything out.
Right. Okay. I like that.
But you don't leave it there.
It's like,
I think
no,
that's where we get stuck. Is we're like, oh,
that's where we get
journaling means
stuck.
you just like sit down and like write your thoughts. It's like, okay, we just take stuff out, and eventually you're like, okay, like we got to get into phase 2 here.
Right. So
What's next?
what is, I guess, what is phase 2? And my question was also stemming from like, probably because I didn't have a phase 2. After 4 months, it was just like, like especially when you're doing free writing like that. What do you call that? Freehand, free stream of.
Stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
So
Yeah.
especially with that, a lot of the thoughts can get repetitive, especially if you're doing it every day.
Yeah.
I was doing it every day for like 4 months. So it's like the same sort of stuff coming up over and over again.
Yeah.
I didn't exactly have a phase 2, like actionable items. And so it just faded into
Yeah. So
oblivion
that's where
as
the
a
mindfulness
practice.
comes in. And it's that we are the beings that respond to our thoughts.
Mm,
Like we have so many thoughts, but then we're deciding which ones to act on and how.
mm,
And so that phase 1 is like, I'd even say phase 1 is the question or the
okay.
intention. Like you start with a question or an intention for yourself,
Mm,
and then you like vent. You like just really get it all out, and then you come back and you'd say, okay, how do I respond to this? What are my thoughts and feelings about my thoughts and feelings?
mm. Right.
Oh
And
my
you can
god.
separate those things too. Just like you can also separate facts and interpretations. Like
Mm,
if you're describing something that happened, you know, it, a lot of times we use like loaded language, like, well, I was giving class and he just walked in and like screwed me over, took it over all the attention in the room, and like he's a jerk, and like he just wanted, and like we don't know the person's intentions or whatever.
right.
So we just like, okay, here's the facts, here's how I interpret it,
Mm.
and you really look at your interpretations because that's where we go off.
So with this, so let's say you're calling it phase 1 as like question or intention. Phase 2 is like the stream of consciousness, let it all out, venting sort of thing. And then phase 3, responding to that. What are my thoughts and feelings about my thoughts and
Processing it,
feelings?
you
Right.
know.
And I guess it has to transform into action at some point. Like if you come to the point of what are my thoughts and feelings about my thoughts and feelings, then from that point there has to be a transition to some sort of action in order for it, the whole process to be consecrated, so to speak.
I like to approach action from identity,
Mm,
developing your sense of self and purpose, and then you're directing your actions from that. Like, I am a clean, confident, purposeful man.
mm.
Now, how do I act like that?
So that means, and that when you're journaling about that, when we're coming to responding and transforming that into action, we should maybe lead with another question about how I'm looking at identity to understand
Yeah.
how we might.
Well, the nature of children is they can go in any direction, you know, and or even like drama, you can become anything. So similarly, like we can act any way we want, and from day to day, you can change, like showing up in different ways.
Right.
But as you mature and get older, you get kind of like some sutras or some experiences that are like, okay, this is who I am and who I'm choosing to be,
Mm,
and I'm going to be consistent with that. And then other people can be like, oh yeah, that's who that guy is, not just like that's who that guy was for a minute.
All right.
Corona Avatar, you all right, bro? What's going on with your eye?
Yeah. I know. No, I have this like really absurd affliction where my eyes just like arbitrarily start burning very intensely. I don't know if they get dry or if they like. I'm not crying, I promise. But if I were crying, I would totally just cry. Like I don't care. But just yeah, my eyes start burning. So like right now, I'm just dealing with my right. Like usually, I just have to keep it closed. So I probably look like terrible, but anyway, just I'm totally with you guys. Just continue.
I
That was great. I'm gonna totally rehear this episode just to get all the things again.
I've come to the end of my questions. I guess I do have a final thing about
Got some examples.
Yeah, that was going to be my final thing. I wanted to hear about just transformation in your maybe in your own life or in the life of your clients. From this process, like how it has really helped them, because we need positive reinforcement for taking up something like this on a regular as a regular something that we want to engage with.
Yeah.
To what extent, Prabhu, do you feel like you've broken through?
Hmm. I can feel like I've been stuck in a blackberry bush, and there's so many thorns and it's so chaotic, and you try to pull one way, and the more you pull, you just get
Oh,
Ah,
stuck. Um, and I really feel like there's the opening now, and I just have to it's like conscious competence. Like I can move freely, but I really have to take good care of myself
mm,
and focus and guard my intentions.
wow, I really like that.
guard your intentions. Guard your intentions. Can you just like expand on that a little?
This is one of my most important spiritual practices, and it's
Mm,
just like in the Bible, they say, guard your heart above all things because everything you do flows from it.
mm,
So I might be doing something
Wow.
externally that's like really important or really special, like a special service, and the heart can shift in a moment from like, I'm doing this for service, I'm doing this actually for the benefit of myself and others, to I'm gratifying my ego. And
Wow.
so a big practice for me is to just sit down and from my heart really pray for the Lord to guard my intentions in serving and being sincere and benefiting myself and others.
That's super powerful. I
noted.
feel like that's a really that's also a really wonderful prayer methodology. Oh Lord, guard my intentions.
Did you want to share something? You pulled up all these books we just saw,
Yeah.
these journals.
So like this is my sadhana journal,
This is
and
great. I mean, it's not crazy, but how long have you been keeping this journal? You told me.
I started in 2013.
That's
So
wild.
Thanks, bro.
July 2013, like I can tell you like how many rounds I chanted each day. And
Whoa.
so I track like how many rounds, my reading, what time I wake up and go to bed, and then I just like write a few words each day. Like today I was on
That's
the Honest Man's podcast.
That's
And
wild.
it's really practical because like sometimes you have to be like, oh, this is when I moved from this state to this state, or this is when I quit this job. So I can reference all those things, but also like I can just like get a snapshot, like a snapshot of like an entire month on one page from any year of the last 7 years. And
That's pretty
at one
far out.
yeah, at one point I'd like sat down and went through it all, and I was like, okay, here's what I achieved each year, and here's what I want to achieve this year.
Mm.
It gives me a sense of like what I can do in a year, and it's also kind of accountability to myself.
that's epic. Okay, what
What's
are the others?
Yeah, there's some other ones, some really far out ones.
And then like I've got art journals, and this one's actually from high school. Recently I took a class with Rukmini Podar, draw your
Oh
feelings.
my God.
Yeah,
I did that with her also a few months ago. That was one of the best things I've ever done on a practical level. I just want to, I guess, a
That's
plug
good
or a
stuff.
shout out. Rukmini Potter is amazing, and her work is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, very insightful.
Yeah.
So
at Rockin' Rooksy on Instagram, y'all.
so
Okay.
also drawing. Um, I don't know how much I want to share. This is like high school stuff, you know. Here's like a Egyptian drawing.
Or we
I
could
was like
kind of see
really
it.
into ancient Egypt, like from my childhood. But or even like I got some Sanskrit there. Om Namah Shivaya. But you know, it really like images and words are a big part of the mind. You know, I also write down my dreams.
Mm.
I do that on my
Ever,
phone.
like
Hmm.
religiously?
No, when they really stand out to me.
Okay.
Mm.
Like
Okay.
last night, I dreamt that I was late for school, and then I was driving there, and I had Narayan Maharaj with me in the car,
Cool.
Oh my God, that's
and
amazing.
I was like so split about what to do because it's like I
Yeah,
think you know
yeah. Do you
your
hang out with
compositions and
Narayan Maharaj
material
or
are
go
like
to school?
pulling in different directions. You know.
Mm.
Wow, Prabhu. What do you think that means in your life right now?
Well, it's probably like my mind's symbolic language of like feeling behind uh, a little bit in my life as I'm trying to do too much. I'm like too excited and
Uh,
taking on too much, and then my spiritual life is like, "Hey, I'm here," you know, like
yeah, yeah. Wow, man, I really resonate with you so much.
oh, it's just about being open, you know, like we're the most alike on the inside. So when you're
Mm.
open, like people can just relate.
Mm.
That's one of your lines
That's
that
one of your
really
quotes,
stuck
right?
with me. Yeah. What is most
Personal
personal
is
is
most
also
universal.
Most
most. Yeah, I
universal.
thought we were gonna say it together. Let's try. What's most
It's
personal?
personal. It's most universal. There's a little bit of a lag.
Sorry.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
Jai Prabhu's. Damodar Prabhu, did you have other journals that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I also have like theme journals. Like my closest parent figure was my grandfather, and he passed away last year. So
Mm.
I started this one to just process my grieving around that, and it's like a journal specifically committed to that purpose. Um, and this one was like just like for my like realizations. This is really old, but I remember a couple years ago I found this and I started reading through it, and I was like, man, I didn't act on these realizations.
Mm.
I
Mm,
think that's also a lot of the value of journaling. Something else I do is I have a life vision PowerPoint, and it's like just about like what makes me who I am, my life purposes, what I want to do, what I like, what I value, and I try to return to that and remind myself because I really believe we all have the capacity for all the inspiration and insight we need for a really meaningful and fulfilling life.
Mm.
It's just a matter of like extracting it. You know, like the demons, demigods are churning the milk ocean, and there's like poison coming out, and there's like nectar coming out, and then they kept the nectar in a pot, and they got rid of the poison by Shiva drinking it. So it's like you gotta churn the mind, pull out the realizations, and then write them down
Mm.
and remind yourself. Keep coming back to it.
Can you share the first realization that you wrote down in that book?
The soul can
Damodar.
be, I don't even
Damodar.
know what it's gonna say. Okay, I'm like taking a risk here.
Yeah. That's great.
The soul can be understood by logic, inferred by experience, and realized subjectively by appropriate means. It cannot be seen, heard, smelt, touched, or tasted.
Ah.
Krishna is the original cause and also the active cause of all effects at every moment. He is the essence of all goodness, truth, and beauty, and simultaneously existing in his eternal form, characterized by ever brilliant omnipotence and ever increasing fresh bliss. He is the supreme being, the Godhead. No one is equal to or greater than him in influence, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, or self satisfaction.
Nice textbook, like very textbook
Yeah.
realization. I suspect as if you were to go through the whole journal, it would
Well, that's
probably
where you
become
start.
more deeply subjective.
Like we were talking about prayer earlier and like being
Right.
informal.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the tradition is you always start with prayer. Like if you're addressing God, you always start with praise and appreciation,
Right.
and then you speak frankly,
Mm.
because that's where we're at, you know.
What was the last realization that you wrote down, Prabhu?
Oh man.
You don't have to share if it's too personal. It's okay.
Maya tries to make one settle for less, but Krishna is so kind, he pushes us forward.
Wow.
I'm kind of reminded of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
Um, and he
I
never
really
meant
need
for
to
that to
read
be
that.
he never meant for it to
Stoicism
be
is coming
published.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was like it's like where he recorded the realizations that he wanted to act on and the person
Mhm.
he wanted to be. And it was really just between him and himself. It was never meant for publication. So um that's maybe the final part of journaling is like after you've identified your questions, you vented, you talk with friends, you process things, decided how you want to respond to it, who you want to be. You can write down like, okay, like here's my decisions, you know. When this
Mm.
situation comes up, I'm going to do this, you know. This is the direction I'm going to go in with my life, and
I like
this
that.
is what I value. And you write it down, and you keep it, and you return to it and meditate on it.
That's kind of connects to your theme of guard your intentions,
Yeah,
and I really like that journaling. Well, I've done all this whole process now and then have my journal decisions, and that's what I'm going to act on. I really
yeah,
I'm
appreciate
just realizing now that it's like the perfect way, actually. It's the perfect practice to make yourself accountable to yourself, because like you're the one who
Mm.
wrote it down. Like you know that you realize that it's standing there, pen on paper, boom. Like you can't get away from it. It's really good. Really good.
I got a lot out of this podcast. I know we had a in between sort of coaching session with Karuna Avatar, which is also well appreciated. And we have a little comment here, joking aside. Your willingness to share your vulnerability is inspiring and helps us to look inward. So it was well appreciated, Karuna Avatar. I have a very methodical way of thinking and also a very methodical way of speaking when I'm presenting ideas and so on. So, this episode was like not as methodical as I would have liked, but I got all the stuff that I would want to get out of a podcast of this nature. And I'm going to organize them methodically.
excellent.
Actually, because
Jai.
I mean, Damodar, you've actually shared some really, really amazing ideas throughout the course of this discussion. Actually, I have at least 6 or 7 major ideas that I got out of this, which is too much to recap now.
I've
But I
got
just
more
want to say,
here.
so yes, Damodar has this. This is his website, also, right? CoachDamodar.com. He's I have to full disclosure. When I first started interacting with you, I just thought you were a little weird. I was just like, you like mood wise. I just thought this guy is kind of weird. But then when I actually started to
What do
engage,
you mean by weird though? Like what was weird?
it's more like it's just like a first impression sort of thing, right?
I wasn't so sure about you, and I was being kind of intense.
Perhaps maybe that's what it is, and I'm
I
used to.
also do that. Like when I'm unsure about someone, then I like overcompensate by being like super extra.
And well, maybe I reciprocated that
Super
energy
extra.
and was just like, okay, this guy's a little weird.
We
But
were figuring each other out.
after engaging with you, especially over the course of the last year, actually, I very much kind of my appreciation for you is deepening more and more and more. And just your way of thinking, you're very sober, which I really appreciate about anyone because I'm not very sober for the most part. I have a stoicism to me in my way of thinking
Not a
and,
bad
and
thing
engaging, but
to
I'm not very
you
sober
wanna
all the
like
time.
you wanna make people comfortable, and so you
Right.
make things light.
Yes, that's my general habit. But you have a sort of sobriety about you. Anyway, so just sharing some personal, a lot of appreciation for you is coming from me increasingly as I engage with you more. And from
Yeah.
this episode,
Like
you've
a
shared
more
a lot of
friend.
amazing thoughts that's really made me appreciate this whole idea of journaling a lot more. I'm going to organize it methodically so I can really, because that just helps me to assimilate ideas. The
Yeah.
method helps me to
I hope
assimilate.
you'll
Yeah.
send that to me. I'll be eager to see
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I'll share that
Jai.
with you. But I just wanted to say thank you. You
This is the
shared some
last
really good
point.
stuff
Like
here.
in my writing or speaking, I'll share certain ideas, but
Yeah.
it's when I hear it come back to me from someone who's put it into practice that it's most rich. Like
Yes.
I remember
So
talking with
satisfying. So
I remember
satisfying.
So
talking with
I'll
a
try to
client.
practice also then. I'm going to try to apply this after I assimilate it. And for myself, and like I said, because I'm starting to engage with a lot more guys,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to offer something in this regard also. So I think it could be useful for me.
What were
Thank
you
you
saying,
so
Damodar J? He was
Uh,
still saying something.
Thank you. I was
uh
talking with
missed
I'm
out.
reminded of speaking with a client, and it's on the theme of realizations coming back.
Hmm.
And he was talking about um like he'd just been like going into old habits of like spacing out after work watching TV. And he was like sitting there doing it, and he's like, I'm worth more than this.
Bro, yeah. I did exactly the same thing last night and thought exactly the same thing. I'm
Fist bump.
serious.
That was a
Boom.
fist bump. FYI, a little awkward, but okay. Yeah, so it's like, that's like one of my ideas, and like it was coming back, and I was like, wow, that is so like hitting my deepest like needs and like really fulfilling.
Joy. Jai,
Awesome
yeah,
stuff.
this was really incredible. Damodar Prabhu, we're definitely going to talk soon. Um, and I'm actually really happy that it worked out this way, that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu wasn't here, because I feel like actually you both in your own way have so much to share. And I realized it at the very beginning of the podcast. I was like, oh my God, we're not going to do justice to these guys having them both on the show today. Like I really felt that. I was like, this is actually a tragedy. So maybe my
He's
intention
brilliant and prolific.
yeah, like, and we're gonna
Yeah,
hear that like when he comes, definitely, and I'm sure he'll agree because the internet failed on his side. So
Mm.
so we'll have that happen. But yeah, Prabhu, it was incredible being with you.
thank you so
Coach
much for the
Damodar,
opportunity.
coach, yeah, coach damodar.com. There we go,
Like and
he's got it.
subscribe.
Prabhu, I do feel though like you could make it a little nicer, get like a nice piece of paper and like a fancy font. Like I'm just
Okay,
I'm
it's
aesthetic
like
I'm
It's
aesthetic.
here's all
functional. It
my go-to
works.
notes. Here's like where I'm like taking notes as I talk with people. It's just,
Oh,
but
okay,
yeah,
okay,
I'll
okay.
work on it.
You can print because you dress so nicely. So I know that you have aesthetic sense. So if you advertise yourself, then you can also make the paper
I like
nice.
your guys'
Anyway.
logo. I was actually thinking about asking about the meaning of your logo.
Oh, Chaitanya. What's his name?
Yeah, Chaitanya. I can get you in touch with him.
Yeah, he's
Our
great. He
guy.
did a really nice logo. So yeah, that's the story. If anyone wants to get in touch with us, I haven't said this for a while. And no one yeah, no, sometimes people ariseheroicman@gmail.com. And then there's also at ariseheroicman on Instagram. We also have a Facebook page, but there's not much going on the Facebook page yet. We'll get to that. And ariseman.net if you want to subscribe to our newsletter. And yeah, Kamania, I really agree with that. I really agree with that. We'll maybe take that as a mood going on. Yeah, Damodar Prabhu, we'll have you back shortly for sure. Next week, we have on Monday, everyone take note that on Monday at 12:15. Damodar Prabhu, can you put your website in the chat there?
I was breathing
Kamania's.
too hard again. You
No,
want
no.
my web? What do
I'm
you want me
sorry,
to
bro.
do?
Put your website in the chat. Kamania was just asking if you could do that. I guess
Oh,
Jai
okay.
can also do it because I'm just telling everyone about our podcast next week. So it's going to be on Monday, not Tuesday, because Tuesday is the Shingadev Chaturasi, so we're not going to do it then. So Monday at 12:15, so 15 minutes past noon, and we're going to be speaking with Radhikesh Prabhu, Dr. Radhikesh Prabhu, who's an astrologer, really, really amazing astrologer. Um, he's going to be doing a reading for me this week, so I'll share my testimony. Jai's going to have some great questions, and Mahatma Prabhu is also going to be with us. Yeah, also be present to ask him a question. So we'll really get into astrology. Like, is astrology bona fide? Is it what Srila Prabhupada wanted? Anyway, we'll think of a cool title, and yeah, that's next week, and then shortly we'll have Chaitanya Charan Prabhu back, and then we're also going to be having Kripa Moy Prabhu, Janavi's dad, and his wife for conscious relationships. That's coming up shortly. Um, thank you so much, Kamania Mataji, for being so helpful in the chat there. And it's so lovely. Like Kamania is always like so conscious, like just like the way that she comments and the way she asks questions, and just like I really like her. Thank you for coming, Kamania, and everyone else. And we'll be back next week.
Jai Ho. Thank you.
Haribo.
Thank you for having me. It's great to connect with you
Okay.
guys.
Jai Ho. Just stay on for a sec.